This video explores creating patterns with Adobe Illustrator. This assignment is all about patterns. Not just random patterns, but optical color patterns consisting of two or more colors prepared so that the eye and the brain mix the colors to create a new color in between the two original colors on the color wheel. So up until now, we've talked about filling with a solid color. You can also fill with a gradient blend of two or more colors or a pattern. So we're going to click on the rectangle tool. We're going to go over here and we're going to hold the shift key down to make a perfect square. We want to make sure there's no stroke. We want to see stroke, little Ghostbusters no sign. So if you see an outline around it or you don't see this, make sure you click on it and click the no sign. So no stroke. If we have an outline around these shapes that we're creating, it's going to ruin the optical color effect. So let's pick a yellow color. We'll go to the color picker again, the fill color, click, and we'll pick a yellow color and hit OK. So now, still using the rectangle shape tool, over here we're going to go right to the center, and you'll notice when you put your cursor in the center, it actually says the word center. And I'm going to hold down the shift key again to make a perfect square, but I'm also going to hold down Alt Option, which means I draw out of the perfect center. And I'm going to make a perfectly centered little square inside the big square. So right now it's the same color, but I'm going to go click on it, and I'm going to go to red and pick a red color and hit OK. So now I'm going to select both of these at the same time, and I'm going to hold down Shift and make them really, really small. And I would probably want it even smaller than this. I'll zoom in. And the key is you're looking for the sweet spot. You want it to be small enough that our eye does the optical blending of the colors, but large enough that you can still see the individual patterns, because texture and pattern are part of the aesthetic challenge of this project. So remember, we're zoomed in. I'm going to leave it this big, but in real life, it's going to be up to you aesthetically, but some of the patterns at least you'd probably want even smaller than this, so our eye does a more thorough job of blending. So next thing, we want to access the swatches. Here's the shortcut for it. Again, all of the panels, just like in Photoshop, are under Window. So here's the swatches panel, and if you drag something that is selected into the swatches panel, see how it has a plus? You let go and a new pattern swatch has been created. Okay, now I'll hit delete, and if I create another shape, I could draw a shape or draw one with the pencil tool or the brush tool or anything else, and I select that pattern, click, then I've made this big giant pattern of yellow and red. So in order to make this blend more effectively, you just make the pattern even smaller. Zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, make a tiny little square and bring it over there. But it's really, really important that the red square comes from the exact center of the yellow square and that they're both perfect squares, because then you make a geometric pattern that repeats. So let's delete that. So let's make a new pattern. Let's go back to yellow and hit OK. And let's hold Shift down and draw another perfect square. This time we're going to pick the ellipse tool, go to the center, hold down Shift and Alt Option. So you're drawing out of the center, and we're drawing a circle, a dot. Okay. And we're going to make a blue color. I'll just pick on the blue swatch, click, and I'll select these both. And I'm going to make them really small, holding Shift to keep them proportional. Then I'm going to zoom way in. I'm going to make this one smaller. And with it selected, I'm going to drag it over into the swatches, delete this just for now, and then I'm drawing a pencil path, make a little blobby path again. And with that selected, I'll pick the little new pattern that we saved, click, and made a pattern. And you can see the pattern doesn't enlarge when the object enlarges, right? The pattern is established by the size when we drag it in, and it just repeats. And if we zoom out, we can start to see it looks a little greenish. But I would, again, make the pattern even smaller than that. If the pattern looks too large to you, just reduce it even further, and you'd probably aesthetically want a variety of sizes for the patterns and the textures. So let's hit delete. One more thing. Let's draw a rectangle, a perfect rectangle. And let's give it a solid color again. Let's give it a solid yellow. And this time, you can see that your cursor lines up perfectly with the middle. I'm going to not hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to drag one over half, the right half of the rectangle, of the square. Click. And then I'm going to change that to blue. Okay. And I'm going to select this. And it's really important that these all line up or things will get messed up. So I'm going to reduce it, making it really small. And in real life, I'd probably make it smaller than that, but for expediency's sake, and so you can see it on the video clearly, that's our new pattern. So if I do that, and I make a shape, and I select that pattern, then I have stripes, right? So again, this would only work if you have stripes that are an exact square, and the colors each fill exactly half of it, and that way it repeats uniformly. Does that make sense? So those are 3 different really basic patterns that you can make. So basically, when you fill a vector path, you can fill it with one of 3 things: a solid color, a gradient, or a pattern. So you will need to use patterns, and you're likely to use solid colors, but you might not use gradients at all in your project. But just for the sake of completeness, I'll show you how to make a gradient. We want to open the gradient panel. All of the panels are under Window, and there's a shortcut right here. Click, and here's the gradient panel. And the gradient panel has a gradient strip right here, and each of these little things that look like houses or suitcases underneath are the colors for the gradient. If you want to change the color in a gradient, you click on the little house. And if it looks like this, just black and white, you can go under here and access CMYK, which is the default in Illustrator, and that's okay for us. And we can change the color to a red color. Then we can click on the other suitcase, click, click. And we can convert to CMYK again, and we'll pick a yellow color. If we wanted to add a third color or more colors, we can click underneath and a new little house appears. We can go click, click, and change the color here. Make it a green color in the middle. We can adjust by moving the house how the gradient works. If we decide, no, I don't like that green color, we can click, hold down, and just drag it off. So let's just say we want a linear gradient from orange to yellow. So notice the fill color now is that gradient. If we want to save that gradient to the swatches, we just hit the new sign, new, and I'll call it orange, yellow, and a new gradient swatch is saved to the swatches. If we draw a shape or any other kind of closed vector path, it'll be filled with the gradient as long as the gradient is the current color. If it's not, then you could just click on the swatch, click, and the selected object will turn into the gradient. If you have an object and you use the gradient tool, then you can change the direction of the gradient by drawing it. If I'm way up here, then it's mostly yellow. If I go way past it, it's mostly orange. That's the gradient tool. So that was a linear gradient. We can also create a radial or round gradient. And I'm going to switch these so that the darker color is the outside color, which I can see up here. And I could use the ellipse tool, holding down Shift, make a circle, and you can see the rounded gradient creates a 3-dimensional effect if you're using a circle or an ellipse. And you can use the gradient tool to modify a radial gradient as well. and delete. So that's it for our technical instruction for this assignment. Go make some optical color. And don't forget about composition, purposefulness, and visual consistency.